As we have already touched on, the scale of the number crunching involved in this election is quite astonishing. 190 million eligible voters, 67 million or so voting for the first time, a turnout above 70%, voting in 500,000 polling booths. Here to help us out with some of those numbers is Debnath Guharoy. He is the director of the Roy Morgan Research Asia, also chair of the Victorian branch of the Australia-Indonesia Business Council. Debnath, good to have you on board with us. We've been talking about the quick count. Very briefly, just how does it work?
It might be useful for your viewers to understand that there's a difference between the predictive polling that comes before the election and the exit polling which comes after the election. So if you look at the predictive polling, which is what most people get to see most often, it's really based on, say, in a country the size of Indonesia, some 1,500 interviews spread evenly across the country would give you roughly a 3% margin of error. If you step that up to 3,000, like we do, we run the country's biggest poll, and we've done that for more than a year now, every month, it doesn't decrease the margin of error dramatically. What it does enable to do, and enable the user to do, is to break that data up with more granularity so that you can actually read it by age, by gender, by province, and make more value out of the broad numbers that you would otherwise get. So that's based on predicting what's going to happen. And that's what most viewers have seen. What we're seeing today is the exit poll, or the quick count. And because it is conducted at the point of polling, where the ballot boxes are, two things are happening.
Actually, at the polling booth,
At the polling booth. Mm-hmm. So two things are happening. The registered pollsters are working with the KPU,
the polling officials,
and scrutinizing the fact that these votes are actually going in, and they take in, say, 2,000 selected stations from Aceh right up to Papua. They'll take the first 500 ideally. So they take them fresh, not at the end of the day, but at the early part of the polling. And if you then have 2,000 polling stations with 500 votes or voters who agree to reveal what they voted, that's how you get the quick count.
And that's why it was also pretty darn accurate, as it has proved in the past, and no reason why it shouldn't be on this occasion.
Absolutely.
Now, yours was one of the last polls taken before the election, pretty accurate as it turned out to be. But let's look at some of the internals of that. The young Indonesians seemed disproportionately to lean towards the Prabowo camp.
And isn't that fascinating? You'd sort of guess, you'd sort of wonder why that's so.
Well, does it have something to do with the fact that the older the voters were the people who remember the Suharto era and didn't want to go back there? Younger voters don't remember that.
Exactly that. And that would be the primary reason why Prabowo has the youth behind him in majority. And Jokowi, not surprisingly, has the support of women around the country, both young and old.
Well, let's take a look at that question. Prabowo, the man on horseback, the authoritative, maybe authoritarian leader. Jokowi, younger, more attractive, and less threatening, I suspect. And as we can see, women voters went for him.
Because he is a man of the street, a man of the people, caring, talks just like anybody else would. He's there on the street every day, not in his office. And this is what the country's taken note of. So there is an endearing quality about the man, a very real quality about the man, that women especially, and older voters, regardless of gender, have taken comfort from.
And men, predictably, I suspect, went the other way, more towards Prabowo than they went towards Jokowi.
Well, it's almost evenly split, the men. It's the younger men who were overwhelmingly in support of Prabowo that gave him the numbers that he was looking for. But it's in the gender split, really, it's the women who were predominantly for Jokowi that gave him the edge in the end.
So in the end, as is often the case in domestic life as well, it's the women who made the decisive decisions in this occasion. Debnath, it's been terrific talking to you. Thank you for that insight. This is Indonesia Votes on ABC News 24 and Australian